The global trade landscape shifted dramatically on April 2, 2025. President Trump, in a move that sent shockwaves across the world, imposed new tariffs on a vast majority of U.S. trading partners. This action marked a significant escalation in his administration's protectionist trade policy. With a baseline tariff of 10% levied on all imports, the U.S. signaled a retreat from decades of free trade principles. This decision has left businesses and consumers grappling with uncertainty, while economists warn of potential economic fallout. The impact of these tariffs is far-reaching. Businesses are scrambling to adjust supply chains and mitigate rising costs. Consumers are bracing for price hikes on everyday goods. The global trading system, already strained by geopolitical tensions, faces a new era of uncertainty and potential disruption. The Trump administration argues that these tariffs are necessary to protect American jobs and industries from unfair trade practices. They contend that decades of globalization have led to the hollowing out of American manufacturing and the loss of millions of jobs. By imposing tariffs, the administration seeks to level the playing field and encourage companies to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. However, critics argue that these tariffs are counterproductive and will ultimately harm the American economy. They contend that tariffs are essentially a tax on American consumers, who will face higher prices for a wide range of goods. Furthermore, they argue that tariffs will disrupt global supply chains, raise costs for businesses, and potentially lead to job losses in sectors that rely on imports. This is why you need to understand tariffs. How do they affect trade with Vietnam? Let's dive in. Quick calculation time. The U.S. exports $13.1 billion to Vietnam, but imports $136.6 billion. That's a $123.5 billion trade deficit. Using the formula, we get a 90% tariff to balance things out. So why only 46%? It's likely due to negotiations or avoiding economic shock. Now you get how tariffs are calculated. Will it balance trade? Stay tuned. The new tariff regime is complex and multifaceted. While a 10% baseline tariff applies to all imports, additional tariffs target specific countries and goods. These targeted tariffs reflect the administration's focus on addressing what it perceives as unfair trade practices by specific countries. China, a frequent target of the administration's trade actions, faces a hefty 54% tariff on its exports to the U.S. This includes a new 34% tariff on top of the existing 20% tariff. The European Union is subject to a 20% tariff, while countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, and Malaysia face tariffs ranging from 46 to 50%. These tariffs reflect the administration's efforts to reduce trade deficits and protect domestic industries from what it deems as unfair competition. The automotive industry has also been caught in the crossfire, with a 25% tariff imposed on all imported cars. This move is aimed at boosting the American auto industry, but it has raised concerns about higher car prices for consumers and potential job losses in the auto parts sector. The administration argues that these tariffs are necessary to protect American jobs and industries, but critics argue that they will ultimately harm consumers and the economy. The complexity of this tariff structure has created confusion and uncertainty for businesses and consumers alike. Companies are struggling to navigate the new rules and regulations, while consumers are left wondering how much more they will have to pay for everyday goods. The long-term impact of these tariffs on the global trading system remains to be seen. The calculation of these tariffs is a complex process. It involves a combination of economic data, political considerations, and the administration's own assessment of fair trade practices. While the exact formula remains opaque, several factors appear to be at play in determining the tariff rates. One key factor is the trade deficit between the U.S. and its trading partners. The administration has repeatedly expressed its desire to reduce the trade deficit, and the tariffs appear to be a tool to achieve this goal. Countries with large trade surpluses with the U.S. are likely to face higher tariffs than those with smaller surpluses or deficits. Another factor is the administration's perception of a country's trade practices. Countries that are deemed to engage in unfair trade practices, such as currency manipulation or intellectual property theft, are likely to face higher tariffs. This subjective element of the tariff calculation has drawn criticism from those who argue that it lacks transparency and predictability. The administration has also cited environmental regulations, consumption taxes, and currency valuations as factors in its tariff calculations. This suggests a broader effort to use tariffs as a lever to address a range of economic and political concerns beyond simply reducing the trade deficit. Despite the seemingly firm stance on tariffs, the Trump administration has indicated a willingness to renegotiate these tariffs under certain conditions. This approach reflects the president's belief in the art of the deal and his preference for using tariffs as leverage in trade negotiations. One scenario in which the administration might consider renegotiating tariffs is if they lead to significant harm to American consumers or businesses. For instance, if the tariffs result in sharp price increases for essential goods or lead to job losses in key sectors, the administration might be open to revisiting the tariff rates. Another scenario is if the tariffs fail to achieve their intended goal of reducing the trade deficit or encouraging companies to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. If, after a certain period, the tariffs prove ineffective in achieving these objectives, the administration might be more amenable to renegotiating them. As tariffs increase the cost of imported goods, American consumers find themselves paying more for everyday items. This, in turn, reduces their purchasing power, leading to a slowdown in consumer spending. Small businesses, which often rely on imported materials, are particularly hard hit, facing higher costs and thinner profit margins. The impact of tariffs extends far beyond American borders. Countries that export goods to the United States face reduced demand, leading to economic slowdowns. Supply chains, which are intricately linked across the globe, experience disruptions. These ripples can lead to job losses and decreased economic growth in multiple regions. Reactions to the tariffs are varied. Some industries, like steel and aluminum, may benefit from reduced foreign competition. However, many others, including agriculture and manufacturing, suffer from retaliatory tariffs imposed by other countries. Policymakers, economists, and business leaders around the world debate the long-term implications of these trade policies. The future of global trade remains uncertain. While some argue that tariffs protect domestic industries and jobs, others believe they hinder economic growth and international cooperation. As nations navigate this complex landscape, the balance between protectionism and free trade continues to be a contentious issue. The decisions made today will shape the global economy for years to come,